What are the achievements so far made, the challenges and plan for an economic recovery for this country. To discuss all this from my far left, places have changed. Dr. Ggoobi used to sit here. Today he is not part of us. He is now a guest. He is seated at the extreme end so that he is on fire. Mr. Ramathan Ggoobi is the Permanent Secretary and ST, Ministry of Finance. You're most welcome to the show.
Thank you, Charles.
You used to be the one to welcome people here. Today they came to welcome you.
I accept all the welcomes. I'm glad to be back.
Thank you very much.
Place.
Next to Ramathan Ggoobi is Honorable Dickson Kateshumbwa, Member of Parliament for Shema Municipality. You're most welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Next to him is the Honorable Paul Omara, Member of Parliament for Otuke constituency. Is that how they pronounce it?
Otuke.
Otuke.
Yes.
In Lango.
In Lango. In Lango is Otuke. It's
Good.
Still the same.
Good, good, good. Good to have you.
Thank you.
And the Honorable Ojara Mapenduzi, Member of Parliament for Bardege Laibi in Acholi. In Gulu, of course in Acholi.
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
So no contradiction. Yeah. And finally, the lady on the show, Council Sarah Birete, Executive Director of the Center for Constitutional Governance. Sarah, you're most welcome back.
Thank you, Charles.
Until I saw your COVID result test from South Africa, I was not going to sit near you because the
bad news from there. But I think South Africa is an example of a combination of two things: hype by media, and also the reactionary elements of other continents against Africa.
Why hype? Why hype? Why are you lowering down their thunder?
No, I'm
They're
not.
the second biggest economy on the continent.
No. I'm saying the hype because South Africa, they did a favor to the world by announcing. Other countries had discovered the new variant and kept quiet, of course, for economic benefits or fears of economic backlash. But when South African scientists, with honest and efficiency, informed the world that there is a new variant that we should all protect, then they become victims, which is very unfortunate.
We will be discussing that, I think, next week or the week after. We must discuss the issue of COVID and its politics, the economy, and vaccines. Today, though, the economy. Let me just say, for purposes of entry into this, at the time that Mr. Ggoobi was appointed, he made a number of points, fundamental in my view to national economy. One, he said, I've come here, I want us, first he said, we need an economy that works, right? Two, that I've come here to try and ensure there is accountability that is visible. I hate to see only accountability that is on paper with no visible results. But his appointment followed a major statement made by His Excellency the President. In May, the President said, I know about corruption in the Ministry of Finance. It starts here, and I know the people. Those are going to form some of the things that we are going to be discussing, but we are going to be very broad because the last 3 months or quarter of this financial year is a lot. Mr. Ggoobi, let me start by asking you to just deliver for us in 2-3 minutes. What have you achieved so far? What are the challenges you have met? How are you planning to ensure that the economy gets recovered as the Permanent Secretary to Treasury?
Thank you very much, Charles. And once again, I'm glad to be here where I started the journey of talking about these issues. I was appointed PS&ST on July 15th. And I assumed office officially on the 18th of August, after a month of the number of processes that people who go to these places have to go through. And since therefore July 18th up to November 28th, I've spent about 100 days in charge of this wonderful office that looks at not only the treasury, but also the economic planning and the development of this country. And I should say, I got quite a soft landing in there, because my predecessor, Mr. Keith Muhakanizi, was the first, among the first people in the ministry to call me when I got appointed. You called me, I think, on the 17th. Was appointed on 15th, on 17th. It was a Saturday. He called me, and he gave me very good advice on how I should go in to ensure a smooth transition, by encouraging me to attend the top management meetings and also make a contribution so that I'm in charge right from the beginning. And one piece of advice he gave me was to work on recovery, right away, recovery. And my first major contribution I made when I went in, before even I was confirmed, is to introduce the idea of having a small business recovery fund to support the formal businesses, but which are small in size, because already government had catered for the micro businesses using a Myoga fund, as well as the microfinance support center on lending, using the SACCOs, supporting the SACCOs to lend to micro businesses. But there was a gap for those businesses which are quite small in size, turnover of about 5 million to 100 million shillings, but employing some Ugandans, about 5 to around 49, and also businesses which are paying tax, but now they have been hard hit. And we had done research, and we found that this actually was one of the areas or the businesses which were disproportionately affected. So I went in and made a proposal to my colleagues that we needed to implement a small business recovery fund. Thankfully, analysis had already been done, and I had been part of the team that had made that analysis, and we managed to consult with other stakeholders in the private sector, in the banking sector, and this we launched it last month.
About how much have you put into it?
We have put 100 billion, the government of Uganda, and matched by 100 billion by the commercial banks to make it 200 billion. What is so interesting is that this fund is going to be lent out to these small businesses at 10%, maximum 10% interest rate. And we are now coming from a background where a number of institutions, including government-owned financial institutions, were saying you can't reduce interest rates below 12%. And I think this is now some testimony, some kind of evidence that we can actually distort these interest rates with even the private sector, that is private sector finance services, part of the game. So that fund, I'm sure it's going to help a lot these businesses which of a small size. Already the medium-sized businesses and large ones had been helped using the UDB and also the UDC. UDC is co-investing with some of them, while UDB is lending them. We have also managed in this period to take to Parliament, first to Cabinet. Actually, the first paper I defended at Cabinet was the Charter for Fiscal Responsibility, a charter which tends to discipline us on how we should keep within our fiscal limits to ensure that we don't overburden Uganda in terms of public debt. We keep it at 50%, within 50% of the GDP, the public debt, and our target actually is to ensure that we go back. We are likely to get above 50% in the next 2 years, this coming financial year and the next year. In the projection within our charter, we are showing we are going to get above 50% beginning next financial year. We are not yet above 50% now, according to the projections available, but we are getting there. We defended it actually in front of these gentlemen who are here. These are not very good friends of mine. They might be here, you know.
They are smiling.
To be friends now, but when you find them in their corner there, they are quite tough. They ask very tough questions, but we answered all of those questions, and they were convinced and passed our Charter for Fiscal Responsibility. So we have a charter, and I remember Sarah was among those who, before he left here, who was actually putting government to task on why there was no charter, which is a legal requirement under the Public Finance Management Act of 2015. So Sarah, we have a charter now, and Parliament actually approved it. We have also a pro-people budget strategy in place. When I went in, I told my friends that my colleagues I work with, who have been very, very helpful and gracious in the way they have cooperated with me and ensured that they made my life so easy. We are working, we are not yet there, but we have at least a strategy in place which is aligned fully to the National Development Plan 3. And I brought in the idea that from next year, the budget is going to be informed by the plan, not the other way around. Gone are the years when the budget informed the plan. Instead, it should be the national plan, development plan, to inform the budget. And we are now working on the budget framework paper for next year to ensure that we can now have the first fully aligned national budget to the development plan.
What is the advantage of this as opposed to?
The advantage is that, excuse me, you are now budgeting for what the country has agreed to be the priorities. And unlike before, where you are just working on what you feel as the people who are seated in the powerful offices to be your own ideas, and you budget for those, or those which are coming in from other people, politicians, and so on. We are now saying there are those things which have been researched and consulted on by some people. They went around the country, consulted local governments, consulted the civil society, consulted academia, did research, and put together a plan. Now, this plan is the one we want to implement. But as you know, before we were able to implement this plan, COVID came. So there are some assumptions which have changed, and we are taking care of these. So we are saying in this budget strategy, the first thing we are going to put our emphasis on next financial year is the recovery of the economy from the COVID pandemic by, number one, ensuring that all Ugandans are vaccinated, those who are eligible for vaccination of age and their vaccines. And the story has actually changed now. We have vaccines. The other day was at NMS in Entebbe, and they told me in the refrigerators there, they showed me actually, we went into the cold rooms, they had 7 million doses of vaccine, and they were on that day expecting another 5.5 million doses of vaccine. So we have enough vaccines, and the Ugandans now, we have no excuse for not having these shots. And it's a game changer, because those countries which have managed to reopen their economies, like when you go now to UK, they are nearly fully open, and yet across you'll find countries like Germany, they are contemplating going back to lockdown, because Germany has very low vaccine intake, while UK has managed to get what we call the herd immunity. So we are saying now here in Uganda, we are going to put also emphasis on facilitating the Ministry of Health and other partners to vaccinate as many people as possible, and we are doing that.
Okay.
Then we will refocus the budget on now the priorities which are in the socio-economic transformation. His Excellency the President told us this 5 years, 2021 to 26, they are years of socio-economic transformation, meaning we are transitioning the economy from focusing on infrastructure only to now focusing on household incomes, wealth creation, job creation, exports, and industrialization. Those are the things we are trying to do in the budget, so that we can have the people feeding the economy.
Okay. Honorable Omara, you sit on the budget committee?
Yes, please.
And are these listed a panacea to the economic recovery from where we are? You come from a banking world, and especially with your experience in Africa. Are these policies, plans, strategies by Ggoobi and the team a good indicator that we can recover within a short time?
Thank you very much, Charles. And it's quite interesting to listen to the PS enumerate some of the things that him and the team have decided to do to help our economy to recover. In the main, is very aspirational. And in your opening remarks, you said one of his promises was to have an economy that works. The other one is accountability that is visible. Now, I like his first point around economic recovery. As we are all aware that the country during the COVID went through a very difficult time, a tumultuous period. And economic recovery programs would actually be the best thing to do. But one of the things that I'm disappointed about is the amount of money that is put for economic recovery. 100 billion shillings.
You said 200, 100 plus 100.
Now 100 is government, then 100 is matched by banks.
Yeah.
So that is 200 billion shillings. Now I want to give some numbers here just to show you how desperate the situation is. We have, Dr. Ggoobi, domestic arrears by the private sector people that he would really want to salvage, standing at over 4 trillion shillings.
Yeah.
That is money by the private sector owed by government, which is unpaid. And these people would have borrowed money from banks to either manufacture something or provide a service to government. And during COVID and during this time, the government owes them. The interest rate is multiplying. The banks are doing foreclosures on them and putting their properties on sale. I would have loved to listen to Dr. Ggoobi about what government is going to do to deal with the domestic arrears. First, the 4 trillion shillings, what is the plan around it? The second one is around corruption. Not very long ago, a few days ago, the IGG made a pronouncement that in this country, over 10 trillion shillings is stolen annually. Now, I would have loved to listen to him to say what kind of fiscal discipline is going to bring around.
Did they say 10 trillion or 1 trillion?
10 trillion.
She was quoted saying 10 trillion.
She quoted saying 10 trillion.
But
yes.
We may need to.
I hope you know what a trillion is.
That's the figure from the IGG.
Maybe the PS.
I'm quoting her. If she's wrong, then that's a different thing.
No, but Paul.
Yes.
This is what I think.
Yes.
Honorable Mapenduzi asks a good question.
Yes.
Because I also asked a question on online, and I said, does she mean 1 trillion or 10 trillion? Because I knew that the World Bank had been talking of about 500 billion for some time that disappears in Uganda every year. And I thought that it had increased. That is what the Ministry of Finance had said earlier. And I thought it would increase maybe double, because we are really terrible now in theft, or we are very good in theft. Maybe it would go to about 1 trillion. But for it to have jumped to 10 trillion, the IGG may need to clarify.
To clarify, okay. So, but let's move forward. So the 200 billion in a budget of 44.7 trillion is a drop in the ocean. It's no rescue plan at all, because the PS, with the team, the officials in the Ministry of Finance, recently had or made a budget cut of 40% across the board. Now, was that a budget suppression? Where did the money go? I would have been happier if they said, you know, because we had to make a rescue plan and we did a budget cut and we moved this money towards a rescue plan of, say, 1 trillion. That would have made sense given the circumstances that we face. The other...
How much would you have wanted, in your view? And you are a numbers guy, you are a senior banker. I would want to know, ideally, what figure would you want from looking at our budget?
At least 1 trillion would make sense.
1 trillion.
1 trillion would make sense. We're talking about the country, the economy. 200 billion can actually be borrowed by one person or two.
Some manufacturer.
Yes, some manufacturer can get the 200 billion. It will be nothing.
Good.
So the rescue plan should actually be much bigger. And also, you can do a rescue plan by saying, okay, we have domestic arrears, and these people are struggling. Let us pay them now. It's their money. So the 4 trillion, you should have had a plan to say, we want to salvage the country. They can look after themselves. They are running their own business. Then give them their money. That for me.
You pay them, then they will put money in circulation.
Then, yes, because they have people they're employing. They have suppliers they have not paid. You see, they could have got money. They have a lot of account payables because they've got maybe some commodities on credit, and they're waiting for government to pay.
Okay.
They would have done
just wind up. I need to bring in your colleagues very fast, and
I wanted now to make a comment on Charter for Fiscal Responsibility.
Go for it.
We had a long debate. I sit on the Budget Committee. We listened to government. Now, the Charter for Fiscal Responsibility put our debt to GDP at 50%. But as we speak now, our debt to GDP is at 52%.
It is 52.
With the recent supplementary budget which we approved, the PS knows that Uganda will have to borrow 2 trillion shillings to support the supplementary which we have approved. And by 2022, our debt to GDP ratio will be 54%. Now we are moving the other direction. Although in the charter they say by the fifth year, we should have a debt to GDP ratio of around 49. I am not very, how do I put it, very, very satisfied or confident that we will have a debt to GDP ratio of 49% by the fifth year. And this is why our appetite for borrowing is cascading, is escalating. Because even the supplementary which we approved recently, the gentlemen are going to borrow. Domestic borrowing will be, I think, about 1 trillion. I don't know how much it is, but the 2 trillion is another borrowing. And if the appetite for borrowing is going up, how do we then stay within the Charter of Fiscal Responsibility of 50% or even 49%?
Okay.
So I don't know what the PS would say, the magic formula it will adopt to really change these things in a manner that will save the country. Because right now, the debt budget component of annual budget is now sitting at about 36% of our total annual budget, and it's 16 trillion shillings. Out of that, 7 trillion is interest component alone. Now, if you do not manage your debt, and the IMF actually has put a figure of 50% for us to manage our debt. Right now, we are 52%. By 2022, we are 54%. Now, with a tax to GDP ratio of 13%, we only collect 19 trillion, Doctor, out of the 44.7 trillion of your budget. Now, if we do not adopt a comprehensive domestic revenue collection strategy that increases our revenue collection or revenue tax to GDP ratio from 13% to even 20%, then there is no way we are going to reduce our debt to GDP ratio.
Good. Honorable Kateshumbwa, you have had the two sides already, and you sit in Parliament. Is it Finance Committee? Budget Committee, and you're looking into the documents, you're looking into the reality on the ground, and you're looking at your people, Ugandans that you represent, and asking yourself, can these discussions we are having really save the economy? Can it help the economy recover? What are your thoughts on where we are standing as delivered by Ramathan?
Yeah, first of all, I want to start by saying that the PS, when he assumed office, he has come with a positive mindset to cause change, and also approach the challenges. Now, the danger we have, and I really wish that it doesn't fall into it, is to get into business as usual, especially in the first year, because there is a lot of expectations from him. The SME fund was a very good idea, but it's not good enough, like my colleague has mentioned. I think a lot has to be done, first of all, as a country, to be realistic. The government generally, the thinking across government is usually how to spend. That is the general thinking. Budget, how much expenditure, without looking at where is the money going to come from. And this is one of the biggest problems that the PS will have to face. Because when we are discussing the Charter of Fiscal Responsibility, the targets of achieving a fiscal deficit were not met. And I think we performed at -9%. Now, the next year, the target is -6%. realistically, I do not think that anyone in that ministry believes we shall achieve it, including the PS. You may not say it. So when we have such situations, I think we need to be realistic. First of all, as a country, tame the expenditure appetite. But secondly, there has to be a conversation about the source of revenue. Now, if you look at the budget, as my colleague has mentioned, you have a very huge percentage out of the budget that goes into debt repayment. And that money is not invested here. So it will never be productive in the economy. Then you look at the other characteristics of our budget. It's largely consumptive. Now, when we were starting this term, there are certain expectations that were made. For example, we expected to save a lot of money as a country as a result of the rationalization of government. I think that has taken a slow pace, and I don't see the momentum to actually achieve that. Because once that is not done, then the targets out of the savings out of rationalization will not be achieved. Now come down to the budgeting. The ministry recently issued the first budget called circular. And when you look at that circular, there is no money in the parish model, which is I sit on the back of the Presidential Advisory Committee on Budget. And we have written to the ministry to ask them to find money for parish model. It's not there. But also, the most disturbing is you know, this parish model, we are all looking at it as a, you know, the smoking gun that is going to transform our households. If it's not a priority to come out in the first budget called circular by the Ministry of Finance, then we ask ourselves, where is the priority? But the other second observation that we noted that is very, very disturbing is the whole parish model has got 7 pillars. We've been discussing them. But you do not see the ministries or the MDAs clear on how the other 6 pillars, other than the financial inclusion, where we are looking for 1 trillion, like the president promised. That's 100 million per parish. We have 10,000, I think, 954 parishes. So the PS here must find 1 trillion. But secondly, we need to see how the other pillars, social services, the production, storage, marketing, is going to be approached or effected from a parish, because that's how you now reach the bottom line. But if the ministries responsible are approaching the business as usual, how would you, I would like, for example, to know how many we have parishes we know, how many parishes do not have a school, because it's a social services that we promised, and we said it is bottom up. So you have a parish committee who are going to discuss and say, you know, we need a hospital, we need this. How does that fit into the budget for next year? It's not coming out clearly. And I think if we don't move a little bit, you know, with a lot of momentum, to see the rationalization implemented, and then strategies on how revenue will be increased, plus, you know, proper alignment of the NDP3 with the budget, then I'm afraid we are going to have a lot of business as usual. Finally, the issue of supplementary expenditures. What we have seen is that and I'm glad we've discussed with the PS, we hope that this will be cured. Because it's one of the tricks, of the tactics of, you know, you leave out the most critical items, knowing that at a certain point, a supplementary will be tabled before Parliament. And then we have no option but to pass it, because you find things which are recurrent are in the supplementary request. So we have a lot of expectations, PS. We like the approach you have taken, but I think there is a lot of work and a lot of mindset change within your colleagues to make sure that, you know, you need to review the whole budget completely, and let's be realistic.
Okay. Honorable Mapenduzi, you talked a lot about the parish development model, especially because of where you sit and where you come from, a local government leader, but you sit on the Committee of Local Government. But broadly looking at the plans that the PS laid out for recovery, do you think that these are plans that we should trust can really recover the economy? What are the areas that you think as an MP should be tackled? We know that, and we blame sometimes, you know, in fact, many times now we blame Parliament for passing the supplementary budget. But Dick gives an excuse which sounds plausible that, you know, some of the recurrent expenditures are in the supplementary budget, and therefore they are really priority that must be funded. And so your hands are tied as MPs. What needs exactly to be done to recover the economy, in your view?
Thank you my brother Charles. Maybe before I answer that, I want to thank the PS. When you hear him speak, he gives a lot of hope. But I would want to see that hope translated into actions and results. And it would, I think it would not be very realistic for me to start judging him. Because we need to understand the complexity of what he's involved in. But I also want to say, just from his tone, Mr. PS, you give me a lot of encouragement, because there was some kind of arrogance and impunity that had germinated within the Minister of Finance. And I'm saying this from using my own experience. The fact that I work with the local government, and we, you know, I know what we went through. So your tone, and obviously you know what you're talking about, you know what should be done, and that is the direction we should take. So you need to provide that leadership, that technical leadership, and I want to thank you for that. And just coming to the question Ladit Charles asked, it's important to first look at the situation, the picture that is painted right now, just like my two colleagues have put it. Today in Parliament there was a report given when Parliament was debating matters related to some loan borrowing, and a report was given by the committee. And when you look at this report critically, then you realize that the picture being painted is not a very good one. And I think that should help the PS get to understand the kind of expectation we have as a country, but also the challenges the committee pointed out that actually our tax to GDP ratio has stagnated around 12%, all right? They went ahead to indicate that our domestic revenue has also stagnated around 13%. Now, just like my colleague indicated, when you look at our public debts, the ratio, you know, looking at the debts to GDP ratio has also increased. In 2000 and around 2019, our debt burden was at 35.6%. Today is about 49.9%. close to what my colleague just indicated. So you can see just within a period of 3 years, the debt burden has gone from 30-something to 49.9%, going to 50. Now, that is not a good indicator. And so the PS needs to really, and again, when you look at the borrowing that is going on today, Parliament gave permission for some borrowing to take place. But you see, a lot of this money that is being borrowed largely covers revenue shortfalls and looks at, and a lot of the borrowing went around dealing with the COVID-19 containment measures and all that. But again, the annoying part is related to what Honorable Omara just indicated. Mr. PS, when you are looking at recovery and then you put 100 billion, and just within a period of, from last year when COVID started to let's say July, the country spent about 4 trillion on COVID-related, intervention. And then dealing with the impact of COVID, the economic impact, and how to recover from that, we are still putting 100 billion, and the private sector is expected to put 100 billion, the banking institutions, and I think we should be able to do a lot more for Uganda so we can recover, because the signs are worrying, and I'm not going to blame you for that. It's a process, but I think we need to put a lot more effort in dealing with that. Now, coming to the issue of this parish model, and that's where I think there is a lot of lying that takes place. First, I think many of our technical people try to impress without bringing the kind of honesty we need. I think we should be honest to ourselves and say, look, this works and this does not work. And when people begin to raise concerns and say, this is not likely to work, and people should listen. In this country, when you begin to critique, you say, this is not going to work, and people think you are just negative. It's not about negativity. And that is the kind of reasoning some of us have fronted. I started talking about the parish model in March, before I handed over as chairman of Gulo. There are many things, and the first thing we talked about was, how do you keep on bringing different guidelines, and within a period of about 4 or 5 months, there were close to 5 or 6 different guidelines. The implementers became confused. They do not know what to do, and now that lays a bad foundation. But then coming to now how it's going to, you see, the other confusion on the ground is, you think this is going to be a vehicle that will touch the last man and woman down there and transform the economy and scale up household income, generation. And then it's being watered down by so many other, statements that you see. It's supposed to look at where there are no bridges, or there is. We should not mix it. In other words, you may think some people are trying to run away from responsibility, so that tomorrow when things that don't work, they'll say, you people, you those at parish level did not do a good job. We sent you money. If you have not, moved out of poverty, you are responsible. But how much money are you sending? Even 100 million. Say you are sending 100 million to a parish. The parishes in this country are not the same. Geographically, in terms of population sizes, and also you cannot treat a parish in a city like Gulo the same way you are going to treat a parish in a rural area. First of all, the kind of enterprises are not the same. You come to a parish like Ggoobi in Badege Layibi that has a population of over 50,000 people. And then you go to another parish that has a population of about 1,500. These are things that we have talked about. So, for me, I think even looking at the debt burden and all this, the PS, with his knowledge and the kind of passion he has got, needs to first be very firm. You need to be very firm on the indiscipline that has grown in government generally. And I'm telling you this from using my own experience as a local government, someone will work with local government. There is a lot of indiscipline, financial indiscipline, wastage of resources. You find market infrastructures built in villages, they're not being used. How do you plan and put things that are not used by the people?
Okay.
That has a lot to do with planning. You look at, there are lots of wasteful expenditures that you need, with that leadership, go through a review process. Look at some of the areas that are not useful, save money, and inject a lot of that around the recovery component we are talking about. But I'm very hopeful, and I really want to encourage you.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. Sarah, the, one of the things that the ST talked about is the Charter for Fiscal Responsibility, and he said that gladly it was, tough questions came up, but it was approved. Did you follow it to see that its approval was well done and it was merited?
Well, before I come to that, Charles, I think I want to join my co-panelists in really commending the kind of person we have in charge of the economy as PS&ST. Young, intelligent, passionate, and there's a lot of hope to the citizens that he can go a long way in fixing our financial problems as a country, of course together with a team and other players. But apart from that, Dr. Ramathan inherited an economy with 4 challenges, key challenges. One is declining revenues because of COVID. 2 is public debt. Then we have the bloated public administration bill. I hope we shall not, and I'm glad the other panelists, our MPs, really. We need as a country to bring to an end the madness of creating districts, creating constituencies, because it has a burden on financial management of this country. Then the other challenge, of course, is the elephant in the room, corruption. John McKay, the co-founder of Whole Foods Market, said that in economics, when the economy is doing well, the people tend to think that you have a certain visionary flair, you know, when you are the person in charge. But when the economy goes down, then your ratings degenerate into being seen as a village idiot. And I've just picked his quote verbatim. So we have, you know, Dr. Ramathan walking a tightrope between doing and daring in the gray of public spotlight. He reads in the headlines. I know this is behind the headlines, but he reads in the headlines because the economy affects everybody, and we are all watching, and we are all hopeful. And he has our support really in whatever he wants to do. So when you go to the president's statement in his inaugural speech, he did say that he knows that this time he's determined to fight corruption, and he knows most of it is in the Ministry of Finance, and that he knows where it is. Dr. Ramathan participated in the making of the NRA manifesto. He was part of the technical team. So having him in the driving seat really gives a lot of hope that a lot of things will be achieved. And the people really have hope that finally we have a right person in charge of the economy. I'm not saying that the others were not competent, but given what he has been sharing in public, you know, his columns in the Sunrise, his media talk shows, his record as a lecturer, you know, he's a shining star, and we have him in the right place. So when you look at our challenges, and members have talked about them, for example, the business plan, the money for borrowing, the 200 billion, I know we are a small economy, but I want, for purposes of comparison and what it can do, to compare with the Build Back Better in the US, where they are focusing on reviving the economy, making sure there is business cash flow, making sure there are jobs, which in turn increases the purchasing power of the people, and then returns, in the economic cycle, returns money back to the economy. So is our plan in any way related to that? that you can create jobs, you can create infrastructure. For example, we have a challenge of taxes on internet in a digital era where we have e-commerce employing young people. So we have things that we are supposed to do, but we act in a regressive manner that does not aid the recycling of money in an economy and generating revenue for a country. When you look at the formalities for handling this money, what is the criteria? Is it known? Is it transparent? Because in most terms, we have had money being put up to revive the economy, but it ends in the same cycle of a network, of a network of mafias. So do the people know, and is this money accessible, you know, in a transparent manner? I think that that's part of the information that people would like to hear. Before he came in the previous term of NRM, we had the much promised and hyped middle income status that should have been delivered in 2020. So I think it will be important to know, are we still on this promise, and to what extent, and what is being done? Because before COVID struck, I think we had only 7 districts that had attained middle income status. Are they still middle income, or they have declined? And what are the efforts of making sure that this dream is delivered at the end of the day, and is he the one to deliver it? Of course, then the scourge of supplementary budgets. You know, among the promises of accountability with the results, and in one of the interviews, Dr. Ramathan had said that he will work towards ending this scourge of supplementary budgets. Is it possible? Because we seem not to understand budgeting in this country. Recently, there were budget cuts, the 40% cut, you know, reducing spending, aiming at reducing borrowing. I know Parliament had raised some questions on the criteria these budget cuts were done. But what was cut, and what are the benefits? And then why do we see, after the budget cuts, why do we then see supplementary budgets? And maybe the last 2 issues I will raise and then answer your question is the issue of pensioners in this country. We have really moved as a country and built a culture that dehumanizes retired public servants that sacrifice a lot to serve this country. We have turned retired public servants into the walking dead in their endless journeys to look for pension that they are entitled to. Why is this our culture as a country? Why can't we respect humanity and respect people that serve this country?
Actually, there are reported cases where pensioners go to look for their money and they collapse there.
I know, I mean, really, why? Why can't we have money for pensions in our budgets and make this money accessible to the people that are entitled to it? And they are clearly known and documented.
And I think that's a question that even the MPs must be answering. Why they don't, and appropriation is the role of Parliament. Yeah. So if the team of Ggoobi do not bring the issue of pension, why don't you appropriate it?
You know,
but let me bring back to. I wanted Ggoobi to respond before we go for
just one issue, and maybe the MPs will help guide me really as an ordinary citizen. I think we have about 120 MPs going to the East African Games, and this tour will cost this country 5 billion. Is this an adventure we must undertake at this time?
We have no idea of the amount.
I'm not sure, but just one thing, Charles. Just one thing. You raise that
amount you don't know.
That what should members of Parliament do in as far as what she raised is concerned, and that's where I hinted that the PS needs to firmly deal with people charged with the responsibility to serve the citizens. I gave the example of, you find in a local government money meant for paying pension lying redundant and going back at the end of the financial year. Now,
whose problem is that?
There are people charged with the responsibility of making sure the pensioners are paid. Why are they not paid?
Okay. PS, you have a lot on your table.
Thank you.
But is it going to be business as usual?
Don't add on. Let me first deal with this plate.
Please go ahead.
Number one, Charles,
Yeah.
if you want wrong numbers, ask a politician. They are very good at giving wrong numbers.
I'm hearing that from him.
The Honorable Mara.
Given apart from the one we have quoted.
Let me respond.
But the rest of the numbers stand by them.
Honorable Paul, let us listen to the PS.
I didn't interfere with anyone when they were speaking.
Yeah.
Yes,
So protect me.
you are protected, PS.
Politicians are very good at giving wrong numbers. Honorable Mara has given the public very many wrong numbers. The first one is saying that there is a total of 4 trillion shillings
In domestic areas.
in the domestic areas.
Yes.
Honorable Mara sits on the budget committee.
Yeah.
Personally, I was in the budget committee.
Yeah.
And we told the Honorable Mara and colleagues that this is air. They should stop quoting it. It is air, air, air.
What is the correct
We
figure?
have verified using all the auditors in this country, the internal auditor general, the auditor general, and the correct number is 1.6 trillion.
1.6.
And we have offset this figure recently by 400 billion. So it is 1.2 trillion. And we told the Honorable Mara and his colleagues that we are planning to pay this a minimum each year of 550 billion, beginning next financial year. And we pay these domestic arrears, and we also have a strategy of ensuring that accounting officers stop accumulating arrears. The second number, which is very wrong, and he knows,
I will come back.
is saying,
You continue, I will not interrupt you.
don't interrupt, don't
No.
even laugh.
No, I'm not laughing. You are on the hot seat tonight.
Is saying that we have stimulated the economy with only 200 billion, because that's what I mentioned here. He knows, he sits on the budget committee, that he has appropriated money for UDB, and we have released the 440 billion for the large businesses. And I talked about them, but I didn't mention the figures, but at least he knows. And the Honorable from Shema, 440 billion through UDB to be lent to the large and medium businesses. They know that 136 billion was also appropriated to UDC to co-invest with the businesses which are struggling, but they are strategic in agro-industry, and they are doing that. Instead of this bailout, which people used to come for, bail me out, we can't use taxpayers' money to bail you out. So we are saying now, get some of the stake, give it to UDC, which is the investment arm of the state. They will pay the money, they manage with you the business until it recovers. If you feel you don't want government to continue with you, you pay back our money and you take back your business.
That's now 570 billion added together.
They know also, Mara and the Honorable,
We'll come back, you finish.
that we have 260 billion, which we have put in a Myoga fund to support the micro businesses in markets, in border, in saloons, in those 18 Myoga. And this money, by the way, is helping a lot of Ugandans who are watching this TV. That's why you see these days, much as we have a lot of problems in the country, there is minimal noise coming from the usual quotas, because this money which people have bad-mouthed a lot, called Emyoga, went and actually is helping those people who had never accepted anywhere to borrow money. The honorable members also know you are counting the number of billions.
Yes.
They know that government allocated 77 billion to Microfinance Support Center to revamp the circles by on-lending to these circles. I may stop there on the numbers
We'll come back.
which have been given to different. So, it is not true that we haven't paid arrears. We have paid arrears. Of course, the fiscal space, if we could allow us, we would say, I'm going to pay all the arrears, because that is a stimulus. But we have paid 400 billion, and next year we are planning to add on another 550 billion. But on top of that, we have also put in place all those funds, and they are helping the people.
PS, can you just hold it there? I need us to go for a break right now.
And I will bring more raw
And
numbers.
then I come back and give you time to
We'll come on
present
you.
more.
Yeah.
But we are going on a note where I can confirm from the PS that you have put 907 billion shillings in different
Plus the 200
interventions.
billion.
Plus the 200.
That is now a trillion plus.
Okay, let's go for a break right now. When we come back, the debate continues. This is Behind the Headlines.
Transact and win money after money with Airtel Money. 1.5 billion shillings in cash prizes up for grabs. The more you transact, the higher your chances of winning. Airtel Money. Instant, secure, borderless.
The e-Government Excellence Exhibition is here. Come and experience the ease of accessing government services online as government entities showcase their digital transformation to fast, convenient and efficient service delivery. The e-Government Exhibition will be held at the Garden City Mall parking on Friday, 3rd November, starting at 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Entrance is free. The e-Government Exhibition is organized by the National Information Technology Authority Uganda in partnership with the World Bank Group, Huawei and Ernst & Young.
These days, our homes are no longer just the places we live. It's where we attend meetings, go to class, keep each other safe, and entertain ourselves. To do this smoothly, you need a reliable internet connection. Connect your home online with MTN WakaNet Max, a fast and reliable home internet solution to power your streaming, gaming, online classes, work, and CCTV security cameras. The MTN WakaNet Max starter kit comes with a free 4G router, SIM card, and 35 GB bundle with no validity, all at 245,000 Uganda shillings. Visit any MTN service center to sign up.
Everywhere you go, MTN. Introducing the all-new Roofing's TMX 500C rebars with cut and bend services. Roofing's, strength of a nation.
It's the festive season and we love it. And that means it's time to celebrate with GoTV.
Come with me.
So get your GoCoder and GoTV value for 25,000 shillings to watch with the whole family. And if you're feeling extra festive, upgrade to our best package yet, GoTV Super.
Something to look forward to.
Download the My GoTV app for more information.
Super.
We all deserve a super festive season. And with GoTV, there's every reason to love it.
Welcome back from the break. This is Behind the Headlines and 100 days of the Permanent Secretary to Treasury, achievements, challenges, and plan for economic recovery. It's getting very interesting, even behind the headlines. My producers have said that there are some questions which are very important to inform the discussion. Let me quickly pick some 4 or 5 of them to inform the response by the PS. My name is Ahabwe Dixon, and I want to commend the PS Ministry of Finance, Ramathan Ggoobi. The name is actually Ggoobi, not Ggoobi. Many people keep saying Ggoobi. It is Ggoobi. For the job well done for our nation so far. His ideas on economic recovery is ultimately appealing. Next, Susan from Mukono. We know fuel prices has a lot to do with prices of other things. How will that affect economic recovery? Very important question, the issue of fuel costs. And then the next is, I'm Daniel from Muyenga. My question goes to Honorable Mara and my former lecturer, Mr. Ggoobi. What plan do they have for the sports sector, both in the short and long term? Next, my name is Mugisha Emma in Kampala. I'm asking the PS that Uganda is fighting corruption, and some of us are professionals in fighting corruption. Are there opportunities for people with skills to bring down corruption? This one is asking for a job. Maybe outside the show. I'm Peter Amoti from Fort Portal City. The first strategy to achieve economic recovery in our present Uganda is to do away with corruption, selfless discipline in our expenditure habits, giving priority where it is due. Let's go. Okay, the last one, Mivule Ronald, aspiring MP Iyala. He says, thank you. We need to devise means of cutting government expenditure. Merging some authorities is a good step. Why not merge some districts too, the way Kenya did it? Mr. Ggoobi, many questions for you, but you had told me that you wanted to produce more evidence of wrong figures.
The other wrong number, the Honorable gave, you say that corruption is taking 10 trillion a year.
No, that one he quoted. I want to defend him on that. And he quoted the IGG.
Okay. But you can't quote a wrong number.
What is the right one?
Because 10 trillion is half of the discretionary budget I have in Uganda, the budget which these people can appropriate.
Mr. PS, why didn't your team clarify on that figure if it is wrong? And I want to believe myself that it is wrong. It was a misquotation by the IGG.
The IG has to go and correct the figure because there are figures already given by the people who are auditing the books on the money they are found lost.
Okay.
The Auditor General is there, and that's not my job of knowing such things. The other wrong thing to the Honorable is the debt to GDP ratio. I don't know where they get these numbers. They keep on throwing, and our people out there, they think these are the numbers. We really communicate effectively, and we went to Parliament again, communicated. I was seated just opposite Honorable Mara, and I said the debt to GDP ratio by June of 2021 was 46.9%, and now we projection that it's going to rise to 49.9%. And by end of 2022-23, we project it would have increased above 50, towards around 50 to 53%.
Actually, the Minister of Finance, Honorable
Matthias.
Yes, today confirmed when the borrowing was being discussed, he confirmed that actually, with this approval, it will be at 49.9%.
Yes.
Yes.
Look,
as
very
of today.
good.
Yes.
Thank you. So now,
that's the latest today.
That's the latest
now
today.
From Parliament.
Honorable Mara comes and says the debt has increased 54%. Now, don't scare Ugandans
I
that
said by 2022, and it is in the Charter for Fiscal Responsibility.
Yes.
It's in that charter.
talk of the projections, but you need to know that these projections sometimes don't turn out to be that. For example, we are now very careful, and I want to tell Ugandans, on how we borrow and which type of money we are borrowing. We assured you and committed we are going to go concessional, and we are looking for concessional debt. That's why we are negotiating with World Bank, with IMF and other institutions. Those loans are very difficult to negotiate because they have a lot of conditionalities. But we are trying our level best to ensure that we don't make Uganda another. There are some countries which have overborrowed. By the way, much as some politicians are bad-mouthing Uganda to have overborrowed, we are number 2 in East Africa in terms of the lowest debt to GDP ratio.
But East Africa has only 5 or 6
The only
countries.
country beating us is Tanzania. But when you talk about other neighbors, if they were actually Ugandans, you would have heard the noise there. Because they are at 66%. We have not yet crossed the 50, much as in the projections, we are going to cross it. But we are saying in the charter, we want to maintain the debt within the means that we can manage, such that by the end of NDP3, we are back at 49%. And that's the projection also we gave you. And you will mark us in 2024. Yeah. The last major wrong figure, this time not a figure, but a wrong statement,
yes,
is to say that in the first budget call circular, we didn't allocate money for parish development model. The first call circular doesn't allocate money. We are just working to get actually all our priorities, and we have given these people the indicative figures we have for them in terms of ceilings in different MDAs, ministries, departments, and agencies, so that they can start to allocate. And when by the time we come to Parliament, by the end of this month of December, that's when you should catch us whether we have not allocated money for PDM or not. And I want to assure you, we are actually doing a thorough review of the budget to ensure that we move money from areas where priorities are no longer attainable to the areas where the priorities have moved. We are almost bordering now zero budgeting.
But
we are saying, I said, let me first finish. We are saying, and we appreciated the PACOB, by the way. He is the chair of PACOB.
The Presidential Advisory, is it Presidential Advisory?
Committee on Budget.
Committee on Budget.
Yes, very strong committee, and for the first time, very, very, very relevant. My people are very happy with what PACOB has done for us. Yeah. And because it has guided very well on the direction we should take, and it is in line with what, as a ministry, we would want to do. And I want to assure the chairman of PACOB that the issue of revenue mobilization,
very important,
we have addressed it. We have put up a team. And even this morning, I was in a meeting up to very late, looking at the progress we are making in having actionable plan of widening our tax base. This tendency of throwing around new taxes every year to land on the same people has ended. We are talking of how do we enforce compliance and then widen the net such that every single Ugandan who makes some money can pay some little money. They don't feel a very big pinch of the tax, and at the end of the day we have revenue, because our target is to raise the tax to GDP ratio to 16% by 2024. We are not very over ambitious. I know some people are saying, only that, why don't you go to 20? We also don't want to overtax Ugandans, especially at a time when COVID has devastated the businesses.
Okay.
So on that revenue, we are doing something. And finally, Charles, because I know when you bring in the team, I might not get opportunity.
You will get.
I'll get more opportunity.
Yes.
Okay.
You'll definitely get.
If you are sure. I was going to tell you about question.
Can we do this? In order to keep it engaging, let's now do 1 minute, and then at a time, so that then we can have more discussions of the issues. But feel free to interject, but with respect. Honorable Kateshumbwa was the first who had wanted to give you some information. Honorable Mara after Kateshumbwa.
Yeah, first of all, I think the PS, when you issue the first budget course circular, and you have put the MTEF allocation, and within that MTEF, we don't see the projection for a critical government program, then it tells us that within the ministry, you still have people who do not believe in some of, because if it's a priority, why wouldn't it come out in the projection? And I think this is one of the challenges we have seen. And PS, what we need is the mindset that you have taken, I think needs to cascade downwards.
Yeah.
Particularly
to the entire team, not only to the head.
Across very many MDAs. Because you see, what we want to see in the next year is see a budget that speaks to the people and that will address the bottom line. Because as you look at the two sides, expenditure and income, if you do not stimulate production, mass production, and then you have, increased consumption, then you will not be able to realize the side of revenue.
Okay.
Because a person in Shema, if he's able to consume soda, for example, if he has the capacity to consume, then you know that you are correcting revenue indirectly.
Yeah.
So what we want to see is seriousness in terms of the key government priorities, and specifically want to see how this budget across the MDAs speaks to the PDM.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to say we have put 100, we are looking for 1 trillion, and PS knows in the MTF it's not there, and they are trying to cut, which is good, because we have insisted as our committee, because the president directed, and we all want to see that money. But we want to see how the other pillars will be speaking to the person at the parish level.
Okay.
How does the various ministries that are responsible for social services, how will they implement the parish model?
Okay.
What we have not seen, there is a lot of mindset change that has to be done.
And isn't mindset change one of the pillars?
Yes, it's one of the pillars, but when do we actually start to see it being
people's minds being changed?
But secondly, as I finished the 1 minute, as we look at stimulating production, there is the other side of the coin, the market, the market side. The internal market must expand. The regional market, we are looking at tapping into opportunities. Of course, the intra-trade within EAC has still remained, at 20% with a lot of non-tariff barriers. So we want to see what is government's efforts to unlock these NTBs. Then, of course, the strategy for import substitution. I'll give you an example. I think there is one of the local investors who is doing research in producing bread with 20% maize flour. That alone, and I've seen the samples, will save $100 million of import. So how then does the government plan in terms of policy to support such sectors? For example, you look at tea. We have had good programs under NADS, seedlings being given, and once you give out seedlings, then you know that in the coming years there will be production. Now, if you go to my own districts, the Greater Opshenyi, there is overproduction of tea. The other day, people are demonstrating, throwing out the tea because the factories are not able to take. So if you are planning as a government in short and medium term, you must be able to know that if you are giving out seedlings now, at the tail end of that process, there has to be processing. And after processing, there has to be a market so that you complete the loop. And in that process, you are actually creating employment and stimulating demand, and that indirectly contributes to the revenue.
Okay. Honorable Mara.
Yeah, thank you very much. I would like to respond to Dr. Ramathan's numbers, and then I will just mention two other things.
You say Ramathan is correct numbers.
Not correct numbers. I would want the public outside there to know that the debt to GDP ratio is a moving number, and that is correct. And the figure is quoting as, say, of June 2020 or June 2021. Depends on the cutting point. But the government is borrowing. I have told you.
Where did you get yours?
I have told you to meet the supplementary budget that we've approved is going to borrow 2 trillion shillings. And it needs to tell us how much of that is concessionary loan and how much of that is domestic. Bank of Uganda
Can I first answer that one?
Let me finish. You will come. And on domestic arrears, we had a robust discussion during the budget time when they presented supplementary. The 4 trillion that I talked about is the total figure, but the 1.6 is what they said they have verified. It's been verified by the Auditor General. Is what they could pay. The other one they said we haven't.
Who produced the air?
Now, who produced the air? We don't. It's not our numbers.
You Ugandans
it's the numbers from government. It's not our numbers. So they said the 1.6 is what we have verified. And the provision that they made to clear those domestic arrears, and we've said, and they made a projection, we'll finish the domestic arrears in 3 years. But if you look at the provision that they have made in the budget, it will take them about 7-8 years to finish because they're putting small amounts. And the point that I was making was, even if it's 1.6 trillion, what you've verified, why should you take 3 years if you're on economic recovery program?
But let me give you information.
Yes, please.
If you supply government and you issue an invoice of 100 million, you are supposed to charge VAT and pay it as tax.
Yes.
Now, if government takes 2 years without paying you, you must borrow money to pay tax to government when actually you are demanding money. That is the effect.
Yes.
And there is no remedy.
Yes.
So without even going in the numbers and the source,
yes,
I think what we want to see from the PS is the efforts in disciplining accounting officers from accumulating unnecessary accumulating areas. Because we have seen areas of tax pay as you earn.
How can they be? First, tell us how do they start accumulating the arrears?
No, we had an example in the supplementary which we rejected, where someone was asking for supplementary pay as you earn. Yeah. I mean, that is indiscipline on accounting officer. If you are supposed to deduct tax from him and pay to URA, how do you divert it? And then you accumulate areas. So we want to hear from the PS actually the efforts in containing the accumulation of areas, because they are hurting the business community.
Okay. PS, can you respond to that, just instantly?
Yes. The first thing I wanted to say is that, number one, why this, I called it air, and indeed it is. You know, the few days I've been in this office, these are 100 days, have confirmed to me what I used to suspect as one of the key challenges in Uganda. You know, His Excellency the President identified what he calls the key bottlenecks to doing business, to the economy, as number one, capital.
Expensive capital.
Yes, access and price.
Energy.
Electricity.
Energy.
Yes, access and price. Technology, as well as logistics, transport cost.
Fuel and all that.
Yes, but on that, we need to add one thing. A problem which economists call rent seeking.
Rent seeking.
Rent seeking. These are people who think that government is there for them to look for money from government. Whether in a correct way or not. There are so many Ugandans, and I would want really to send this message out clearly, that the treasury is not there for people to pick money from. The treasury is there to facilitate the
Business.
economy.
Good. Economy.
Good. To grow. And people who try to cook up documents and so on, thinking they will go to the treasury to get money, this is not a very good practice. And this is the so-called accumulation he is talking about, domestic areas. Sometimes they connive with people in government to make these claims. But most of these claims, our auditors look into them. And
how about if the rent seekers are within
the Ministry of Finance?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. That
as the President said.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. There could be some who are helping them, helping those who are coming to seek rent from the state. There could be people in government. And those ones will be identified with the time. But what I'm saying is, we should really, because we talk this word, corruption. I remember I presented a paper to the MPs in Chankwanza about corruption. And I said, corruption or theft of public resources is usually caused by failure to have strong systems. There is no country where there are good people and another country where there are bad people. It's not that in Uganda, Ugandans were born with the DNA of corruption. But the systems here have been built in such a way that they facilitate. In other words, there is no price
to pay.
There are no consequences. Now, that's why we are saying, slowly we are building these systems, and we shall get there. And for people who think they are going to continue relying on rent, the days in the future, they are not very good for them, because systems are coming in place. Okay. One of them is automation of government. Public finance, management systems are being automated.
Okay.
So that we can identify, like now, beginning next year, 50 MDAs, ministries, departments, and agencies, 50 of them are going to procure online. We procure like we are in a WhatsApp group. You know, when you're in a WhatsApp group and you are typing, all of the members of the Group C that Honorable Katesh is typing. When you delete, all members see you have deleted. They even ask, what have you deleted? Now, we want procurement to be done that way. And the PSS, I've told all the people in government, I'm providing resources for us to automate. And slowly, all the government entities that get money from the consolidated fund will procure through that system, which can be seen by everybody. Now, with the time, we shall deal with these corruption tendencies.
Okay. Honorable Mara and then Sarah, feel free.
Charles, I just wanted to mention, because you see, when we started this debate, we were looking at his 100 days.
Yeah.
And he actually said he dealt with the 200 billion shillings on the account that is what he has done during his time over the 100 days. So when he brought in the UDB and microfinance support.
And UDC.
And UDC. Those were the monies that were given when he wasn't yet the PS. And actually,
But in the same financial year.
Yeah, in the same financial year. I'm a big proponent of government giving more money to UDB. In fact, we should have given them 1 trillion. We've given them 550 because, again, for us to revitalize the economy, we need to allow, give the private sector opportunity for long-term borrowing and also affordable credit. So more money to UDB, to MSC, and to UDB is actually something that we should all support. But I would like to say 2 things again. And these are numbers. So I'm a numbers guy and I read a lot. Now, we have done an analysis, Charles, to find that this is around tax issues. The tax exemptions and tax waivers for the last 5 years totals up to 7 trillion shillings, which in effect could actually settle even our domestic debt.
Another wrong number.
No, it's not a wrong number. There are fact checkers outside there that should look at this number. You cannot just say this is a wrong number. A 5-year period. And we have the numbers in the budget committee. We'll share it with you. Okay. Now, what we want to know is that if we give companies tax waivers, we would want government to ensure that those companies, first of all, with those tax waivers, they are contributing to the growth of the economy. They are employing our people. Because there are some companies that come and invest here, and actually you find a good number of senior employees, and even local ones, are foreigners. So if we give you a tax waiver, we must make sure that you are employing our people. So growing economy is about employment creation. And therefore, what we would expect Dr. Ramathan and the team from Ministry of Finance is to come up with tax policies that grow the economy. And tax waiver could be one of them. But then the question is, if you follow up through, does the policy of tax waiver, has it contributed to the growth of the economy with some of these companies that we have been supporting? So tax policies, I would want to hear, because that is a policy item that should be coming from the Minister of Finance, and is the main man on tax issues.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sarah?
Yes, PS&ST is saying that they will fight corruption using institutions and systems. And indeed, that's more efficient. But there's a policy that is never implemented in government. The key budget economists, like in government institutions, like planners, economists, accountants, internal auditors, are supposed to work in a particular institution on a rotational basis after every 3 years. How come we see people, these are critical people who, a syndicate that put in budgets, you put in the fraudulent procurement, somebody stays in an institution for 10 years. How come this policy is non-functional and silent in the fight against corruption?
No, we are...
PS, respond to that.
We are working on this, actually. Thank you, Sarah, for raising it. It was brought to my attention recently. And we are saying, first of all, within the ministry, we are doing some realignment, internal realignment, rearrangement and realignment with minimal disruptions. You will be hearing some noise coming from in there, because what we are saying now, we should centralize the human resource management, because it's part and parcel of the systems I'm talking about. We are putting up an equivalent of a joint chief of staff in the ministry to help us institutionalize human resource management, such that it is what we call common cadre can really rotate according to what the regulations require. The minimum is 3 years, the maximum is 5 years, and you move. But now there have been tendencies where some are staying in particular areas for so long, and there was no system to really check and streamline and ensure that this is done. We are working on it, and soon you will see the results.
Thank you very much. Someone called, someone from Busia says, a Myoga program was sabotaged by RDCs, that there were so many conditions, and many people have not got, local people have not received. Much of the money is still in the bank accumulating interest. My question to the PS is, who will take the interest accumulated from the deposits made last year? Mr. PS, are you aware of such interest? Then another person says, let me get this, another person says, my former boss, Katesh, is so knowledgeable. Mr. Ggoobi should tap into his knowledge of experience on collection. He has good information that some people don't know. But we are told the PS is doing very well in managing corruption. We pray for him and hope for him for the best. That's what someone is saying.
There is some information which he gave, but the PSC brushed it off and said it's wrong information. About the
stop talking about wrong information.
About
wrong
the
number.
Yeah, no.
about
wrong number is wrong number.
about the exemptions regime.
Yes.
Yeah.
There is a study by International Growth Center.
Yes.
It produced a report in 2017 and projected that in 2017-18, 800, close to 900 billion
Yes.
was foregone through exemption,
Yes.
equivalent to about 1% of the GDP.
Yes. That one.
And
it's
for
true.
the for about
that is a
4 years,
correct number.
It's
But his
That's 217.
So
Within the last 5 years.
as the PS
The last
struggles
5
to
years.
to balance the fiscal deficit,
Yes.
like we have said, there has to be something done.
Yes.
I would like to hear that you have commissioned a study
Yes.
about the, the value,
The tax expenditure.
the expenditure.
Okay.
Because
let him respond to that.
Yeah.
Yes, this morning, today morning, we have been discussing 3 major issues. Number one, how do we mobilize revenue?
Yes.
And we have a team of very intelligent younger people who are trying to help us so that we have an actionable plan for the domestic revenue mobilization strategy to implement it. And the 2 issues, I gave them 2 tasks. Number one, to help us look at how do we expand the tax base. Number 2, to help us identify the distortions within our tax regime that we should deal with. And one of those distortions they are studying is the tax expenditure aspect.
Yeah.
Number 2, there are some taxes which could be on our books, but instead of generating actual revenue,
It's not.
they are impeding economic growth. And therefore we need to look at them and see what multiplier effect are we losing by taxing particular, for example, activities. For example, like a tax on ICT. I would want to see how the numbers look like if I removed it from the economy, how does the economy look like? You know, now we have models in econometrics which can help, and this is what these younger people are doing. So I want to comfort you that in the near future we shall come to the budget committee with the good news on how we are going to deal with some of these questions we have been asking ourselves over years.
What about the question by this person from Busia on Emyoga? That are you aware
Yes,
of what is going on?
we are aware. At first, Emyoga, we are supposed to be grant purely, but cabinet made some amendment on them to allow the circles, because now they were looking at how do you maintain this, sustain the circles. So from government to the circles, zero. It's a grant, 100% grant. But the circle is allowed to charge some small interest, which the members can now plow back, first of all, to run the circle activities, because this circle is like a bank. So if you tell a bank that you lend without charging anything, how will that bank survive? Even in Islamic banking, much as they say there is no interest, you share in the profit. So here, that small interest is charged, and it is legal. It was allowed by cabinet, and the person who's raising it shouldn't really think that somebody is fleecing them.
Someone has sent me the same question 3 times. I think the person is just desperate. Someone called Ezra says, on pension, Sarah is right. Since 2016, we have been told next financial year. People are dying of poverty when their pension is with the government.
When I was releasing the second quarter money, I made it clear that all accounting officers who fail to pay pension on 28th of a month are going to lose a job. And in every district, let those people raise this issue with our officials at Ministry of Finance. Those accounting officers who, because we release this money, the pension money is statutory. They are the first call on the budget. Salary, gratuity, pension, those NSSF, and we pay money on 28th. Every Ugandan should get their money. But now they are, like he told Yandi, is a legend of local governments, the Honorable from Ggoobi. He had one of the best performing districts. I was following these things of CS Bag. It's called what? Scorecard.
The scorecard.
Him, and no wonder he's also among the most best performing panelists. Because
but there are only 2.
No, I'm telling you. No, there are many. He has not given any wrong number. He knows that in those local governments, we have a problem of accounting officers who want to first use people's money to do other things. That's why they are comfortable to sit on the money and return it later. And we are saying now, you return money to the treasury, which is meant for the people, like pension, like, you know, gratuity and so on. You are going to pay a price. Actually, recently, my internal auditor general and his team, they have given me the report. They have outed a report for 2020-21 financial year. And in this report, they are really showing us the accounting officer who are doing a bad job, and a satisfactory kind of a report. These ones we have written, I've written to each of them, and we need answers by mid of this month. And those who fail to give satisfactory answers on why they had an unsatisfactory record of their books of accounts, they are going to lose a job, at least of accounting officer. They will
because those are directly under you, you appoint them.
Yeah.
Honorable Mapenduzi.
Yeah, I was looking at the the figures that Dr. Ramathan said were wrong numbers. And I think from what Honorable Mara said, is trying to project. And I don't think it would be fair to say he's giving giving wrong figures.
Then projection, you report it.
Yeah,
so
because when you, for you to project well, you should first look at, look back, try to assess, look at the experiences and see what is likely to happen. And why I fully agree with Honorable Mara that if we are not careful, and I'm saying if we are not careful because, just as I said, I have a lot of hope that you will provide this leadership.
Honorable, we are careful.
Yes, but if we follow the same pattern, then when you see 2019, June of 2019, our debt burden was at 35.6%.
Correct.
Okay? That was 2019, June. And by today, after plenary, was at 49.9. Meaning within a span of 3 years, the increment was by about 14.3%. And so that sends a worrying signal. And so if we don't, and that's where I agree with Honorable Mara. But also, the other thing that we need to look at carefully is, Doctor, you said there are measures you are trying to take. According to NDP 1 and 2, government had projected that, domestic revenue would annually be able to increase by 0.5%, which after NDP 1 and 2, there was nothing. It has never increased. And then under NDP 3, again, the projection is that it will increase by 0.5%, meaning by 2025, it would go up to, our local, our domestic
revenue collection,
yes, would improve to about 17.5%, because right now it's stagnating at about 13%.
It's 13%.
All right?
Yeah.
So, but again, using the experience of NDP 1 and 2, where we failed to achieve the 0.5%, I think we need to work extra hard to make sure we achieve the 5%, so the 16% you are talking about can be achievable. Finally,
information. I want to you correctly said in 2019, the debt to GDP ratio was 35.
Yes,
then
actually 35.6.
35.6. Now 2020 was 44, and now we said is 49.
49.9.
49.9. But now look at that is debt which has gone up. Now let Dr. Ramathan demonstrate to the viewers how much domestic revenue have we generated over the same period. The borrowing is there, domestic revenue is constant.
Okay.
We are now collecting 19 billion. So the point we're making here is very simple, and our viewers, is that our appetite for borrowing is growing, is increasing. But our strategy for domestic revenue generation is very, very poor. And now what the PS has given us is a promise that I'll put in a team of people who will study this thing. And what we're simply saying is that if you do not put in place a robust domestic revenue generation that increases tax to GDP ratio to almost 20%, given the expenditure projections that my brother Katesha talked about, is that we look at expenditure, we don't look at revenue. And that is the challenge we are giving them from Minister of Finance. Okay. That they have to think very critically how to generate our own domestic revenue to stay within the Charter of Fiscal Responsibility of 49%.
I'm going to raise pay on MPs to generate some more revenue.
But Charles,
just wait.
Just one last thing where I have to conclude is that again, when we talk about domestic arrears, I still want to agree with him. But yes, I think Doctor brings some good news, because we have to agree that even last year, domestic arrears was being talked about 4 trillion, 3 point something like that.
Yeah.
So what you are trying to tell us is, the good news I'm talking about is that you have been able to provide leadership and you verified. And because of the verification, it has come to 1.6, which is good.
Which is good.
Which is good.
Which is good if you've cut down.
Yes, which is commendable.
Yeah.
All right?
Actually, my predecessor put in place a very robust system to verify these numbers.
That is good.
And he has told me one thing. He has kept on actually, he had to pay a courtesy call, and he was advising on one thing. Be very watchful and mindful of people who are frauds, who are coming in, fraudsters, bringing in, these claims. And he was spot on.
In other words, it brings us back to what he said.
Yes.
Probably about 2 point something was going to be defrauded.
Defrauded.
Okay. Someone called.
But don't say the number is wrong.
Justice Muhanji. Justice Muhanji from Sierra Leone says, "I'm enjoying the show, Charles." He says, "Ggoobi, what's the challenge with fuel skyrocketing in a region where the highest is even that in a region where we are higher, I think, than Burundi." And then there is another question that someone called Derek says, "Good evening, Charles. Thanks for the show. Question: we are suffering as businesses because of interest on taxes we owe URA, even when we are in these tough business times due to the COVID pandemic. Yeah. URA does not hold the interest, and they expect us to pay both interest and the principal. Yeah. Where shall we get such money to pay URA? Please advise. I thank you."
Yes, fuel prices, this is a global problem right now. If you are watching this international television, and I think UBC sometimes shows international news, in USA, right now, they're in a crisis because of fuel. Europe, they are also having challenges because of fuel. And the fuel has one major thing that it has a pass-through effect, which is quick, and it affects the global prices very, very quickly. So we have very limited control on the fuel prices, but we are watching, and as government, we shall be able to, so far, when you look at our inflation figures, they are actually very good figures. UBOS released recently the numbers on inflation, and our core inflation, even headline, which includes everything in the basket, all the goods, all items, is hovering around 2%. So the pass-through effect hasn't been too much, but it's not good to have fuel prices rising.
If I could supplement on
Okay,
it.
I'm left with only 6 minutes.
There is a last question we are asking. You don't want me to answer it?
No, you first answer that. You first answer that question.
It was which question?
Because
I can answer.
Okay, Sarah.
Yeah, if I may ask Ramathan on the issue of public debt and the sustainability of fiscal contraction.
Yeah.
Given our challenges of low income and any huge demographics with the infrastructure gaps, in the long term, how can we make sure that we have a sustainable public debt as a country? And then the last question is on banks, how we have dealt with banks over these COVID economic constraints. Banks freezing schools, banks freezing property, including some of the properties of farms where government has not paid them on time. Are there any mitigation measures that you can make to make sure there is, because many countries have stopped bank operations on freezing property over COVID pandemic?
Okay.
Yes, but also Bank of Uganda has come out, and this time it is very strong on, for example, they have stopped banks from charging interest on structured loans. They have also, we are in very good conversations as far as, for example, penalizing those who want to refinance their loans. You know, Sarah, you have been having a loan in Banker A, paying 20%, and you would want to
renegotiate?
No, you want to pay them their money, and you stop there. Yeah. You had signed 5 years, but now in the second year you are saying, no, I'm stopping here. They penalize you with about 15 or so percent. That I've been engaging personally the Uganda Bankers Association, chaired by Matthias Katamba, my good friend, and the entire team. And we are saying, as banks, why do you really go into penalizing someone who wants to get the burden off their head, and perhaps they have gotten a cheap alternative? And with the Bank of Uganda, we are engaging on that one. So it's something which I'm sure we are going to get a solution later, much sooner or later. And it's not a good thing for us going forward. But what you are asking actually is about our lack of credit policy in Uganda. We don't have a credit economy, we don't have a credit policy. And as a result, you'll find that the commercial banks cannot support adequately the real economy. They are more into speculation. You are able to borrow and pay them some interest. You see, if you fail, they take your property. That's not sustainable, even for the banks themselves. Okay. And it's a conversation we are having, and I think eventually, with the credit policy in place, we shall be able to resolve some of these long-standing challenges. Because at first, BOU had assured us, when the numbers of banks increase and they compete, we shall see interest rates reduce, but they are sticky. They have, failed to go down. Even recently, when they went down, we were celebrating a bit, but it was because it was COVID. Nobody was borrowing. Now they have gone back to around 19%. So it is some conversation we are having, and I think we shall be able to succeed.
Okay, let's do 30 seconds each and allow Ggoobi to respond. Final message?
Our final message is that really as citizens, we have a lot of hope on some of these measures intended to bridge the economic gap in the country, intending to have inclusion, everybody included in the monetary economy, control inflation, as much as the example of fuel prices, as much as it is a global, problem. We have seen countries like Kenya and whatever mitigating these fuel prices. I don't know why it's always an exception for this country. Why can't you come in and try to mitigate? Because if fuel prices go up, transport goes up, the cost of food goes up, everything goes up, and then you have people struggling to recover from the economic and lockdown challenges. I think there should be measures to help a citizen of this country get along and cope after the COVID pandemic.
Thank you. Sarah, Honorable Mapinduzi?
Well, two things. One, there is need for us to give all the moral support that the PS needs, and I think you will be able to do a lot in terms of changing the image, the way people look at people. There is a way people have lost trust in many of the people working in government. So you have a duty, and we would love to give you all the moral support.
Thank you.
To do that. Secondly, I think with that firmness, you need to also look at the speed at which services are given to people. Most times there is laxity, there are deliberate delays in the government system, and you don't know what people, some people need services, and then you have to, so there is need to do a lot. It's likely to be quite challenging, but given the goodwill you need, I'm sure we will be able to achieve quite a lot. So,
Honorable Paul.
Thank you, Charles. This has been a robust debate. I want to say to the public there that stay with my numbers. That said, stay with my numbers.
He's sticking to his numbers.
That said, we really we really want to really appreciate the PS, new blood, new ideas, and we are here to support him. And I think you need to focus on fighting corruption. I'm just happy with the numbers of 4 trillion, and he's saying the correct number is 1.6, which means he has saved us money. Secondly, let us invest, let's put some money into UDB, UDC, and MSC, so that the private sector can access that cheap money, because that's how we'll be able to grow the economy. Fight for us corruption in a very big way, because that is actually an existential threat to our
By the
economy.
way, someone sent a message, someone online, people are following online the discussion. So when Sarah said that, why don't you transfer people, PS, those are your people, why don't you shuffle them after every 3 years? Someone sent a message that that table that Sarah is shaking has expensive wine. You know, that is the Kampala language for saying, be careful with that area. So it seems there is something there.
And I think let's downsize government, really. I would actually even be comfortable to say, even Parliament, we need to downsize it. Downsize cabinet, downsize local government. And we build a more efficient thing, because many of us in Parliament can go and do something else. I think that is something that
and you MPs, where the role is about appropriation, you have no excuse. Help the PS to ensure that you appropriate to serve the people. Honorable Kateshumba.
3 issues. One, Ugandans must know that Uganda is part of the global ecosystem. When the price of Brent crude goes to $86, the highest you have seen in the last couple of years, then the effects are here. If the price of the global container freight index has increased, so you expect a country that relies a lot on importation, definitely we shall have some effects here. But also, now, secondly, government, as you look at the various interventions, especially on the factors of production, you are dealing with capital, very good, but make sure the access, especially for SMEs, is actually done well. But don't forget the major factor of production, which is land. And I think we must look at how we are having actually land productivity in this country. If there are no reforms to deal with the land usage, then you are going to have still a challenge in maximizing that factor of production. Finally, the labor as well, the labor productivity. And I want to end with the issue of efficiency. Government needs to be efficient, especially when it comes to providing social services. What we are seeing, the challenges we have, a lot are to do with service delivery.
Thank you so much. Finally, PS.
Yes, Charles, there was one wise person, I can't remember the name, he said the secret is not in counting beans, it is in growing more beans. So don't harvest and sit down to count. So I think I will now spend more time on seeing where the future could be. We are looking at how do we get markets, the markets for our products, so that we can be able to encourage our people to be more productive. You can't just talk about productivity when there are no markets. So we are working on the regional markets and looking at how do we, for example, expand the markets in DRC, because now we need to look at alternatives. DRC is a very virgin area for us, because I was told recently by a very wonderful team, even they went and brought the private sector from Kinshasa. We have there a food market of potential of $1 billion. And we are saying, why don't we purchase a few cargo planes and we take the food there, if it could be done. We're also looking at how do we consolidate our fiscal position. and ensure that we are able to raise revenue to avoid what Sarah fears most, debt. We are listening to private sector. Because if you want to solve problems fast, involve private sector. We are listening to them, and I would want to see how we can, in the near future, have them on board fully. But also when the private sector itself is rationalized, because now the private sector is also scattered a bit. But finally, I'm looking at how do we reopen the economy fully, especially the night economy. The night money tends to move faster at night. So when
people are not counting,
when you close the night economy, the velocity of money reduces.
Yeah.
So
That's
the good
very
thing,
important.
His Excellency the President assured us, kama mbaya, January, we are reopening. So go get your vaccine, and we have our economy back. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we were evaluating and looking at your 100 days, the first, but next time probably we will be looking at your own budget. This time we are still judging you, but from what you are putting in place, not really your budget. We know that this has been a budget that you have inherited, and so the priority might be different. Next time it will be hotter, and we will invite this gentleman again, and thanks for having a good show. Thank you very much, PS. He has assured
of course
the
you
public
paid. I will
to
come
up with his figures, so he trusts his figures. Thank you very much, PS&ST, Ramathan Ggoobi. Thank you very much, Honorable Katishumbwa. Thank you very much, Honorable Mara, and of course, Sarah and Honorable Mapenduzi. Thanks so much from the team here, the technical team, Margaret and the rest of the team, and the producers, Ivan, Etiang, Morris, and the rest of the team, William and all the others. Thank you very much, and God bless you. Kindly take your jab. Know that COVID still exists. Don't take it for granted. By the way, there are people still dying of COVID. There are people still hospitalized, so don't take it for granted. Otherwise, God bless you all. Good night. Bye-bye.
Join us from Monday to Friday for Good Morning Uganda with me, Felix Mkonda,
Priscilla Naluoga,
Robert Chirabo,
Molen Kenyana,
Ruben Mpimba, with all the morning's essentials,
including the very latest in news, traffic,
weather and sports.
Live on TV and across all our social media platforms. #UBCJMU.
Hope you'll be setting your alarms, cause we are
looking